The collapse of the Eldham Union refers to a series of political crises and rebellions from October 24th to November 25th, 2022, which would ultimately lead to the dissolution of the Eldham Union. There are two broadly recognized fronts within the war: the Zaidan Independence Rebellion and the Loyalist USSE Rebellion. The two conflicts would eventually merge together with the formation of the Mars Exult Alliance, which would directly intervene on behalf of the rebelling parties in the Eldham Union. The Loyalist front of the war would end early, with the Loyalist movement disbanding and reforming into the independent realm of Laria. Following the Treaty of Laria, the Eldham Union was officially dissolved. A separate peace between Zaidan, Mars Exult, and Eleanor would be signed later, which would see Zaidan get its independence from Eleanor and a policy to allow states to leave the Eleanorian realms. After their defeat in the Second Battle of Phoenix, the Eldham Alliance would be unofficially dissolved after the withdrawal of Sylvania and Valoran. The war would take place during a time known as No War November. The war would become so large and convoluted that the rules against foreign intervention in the war were overturned. The Eldham Union was the union of Eleanor, the USSE, Asperia, and Jorveheim under a single supranational banner and government, originally having formed as the Imperium. The ascension of Vanla and Krakow to leadership would result in a change of government structure and aesthetic. The Eldham Union would enter the Eldham Alliance with Skalding, Valoran, and Sylvania after a large amount of pressuring to let them in. The Eldham Union would be a major participant in the war against the Volpyrium and face constant accusations throughout its membership of supporting both sides in the Morledron-Sylvania War. Following the Eldham Alliance's victory in the Furry War and the Morledron War, the Alliance was left in a very strong position but without a clear enemy to fight against. Without a clear purpose, most states of the Alliance would turn to management of their internal affairs. The Volpyrian would later join the Eldham Union after the Furry War, resulting in another rebranding to the Sartarian-Saronan Triumvirate. Inside the Eldham Union, major political instability began to brew when Leth of Laria's political faction began to actively undermine the Eleanorians in the Union. After Eleanor had violated a number of treaty obligations and attempted to annex New Dorostorok, Leth, along with Butch, orchestrated a campaign to isolate Eleanor from the Eldham Alliance and break up the Eldham Union. Their attempts would be in vain, as Butch would be impeached and removed from office on the grounds of constitutional violations for his actions. Leth would be found guilty of espionage and release of classified materials. While Leth was on trial, he was working with the group Paragon to prepare a rebellion should the trial result in his conviction. Paragon was extremely angry with the Eldham Alliance after Shiro Kaniza annexed Bardonia, and the leaders of Paragon began reaching out to their allies in the fight to build a counter-alliance against the Eldham Alliance, and so the foundation of the Mars Exult Alliance was formed. Following the trial, Leth would make moves to begin the rebellion inside the USSE in coordination with Paragon and the other groups. The following day, Leth would make a public appearance in the Zaidan Rebellion, where the Zaidan fighters would deliver a stinging defeat against the Eldham Union. After the victory in Zaidan was undeniable, Leth publicly announced the beginning of the Loyalist Rebellion. The cities of Manzig and Nielsbrian would officially join the rebellion, while Genazar and Al-Basad would also fall under the control of the Loyalists. On October 31st, the pirate state of Zaidan declared independence from the Eleanorian realms. Zaidan was a small nation which was annexed by Nexus, and later would be absorbed into Eleanor after Nexus was annexed by Eleanor. The Zaidan rebels were largely unequipped with low numbers. A day before the battle was set to occur, Paragon would catch wind of the rebellion, and Aaron dispatched a group of fighters from Paragon alongside other mercenary volunteers to discreetly show up on the side of Zaidan. Paragon had gone only as a way to mess with Eleanor and to cause havoc in Phoenix, the city which was warring Zaidan, and were initially expecting not to be able to withstand the Eleanorian assault. The Eleanorians were unprepared for the mercenary volunteers which fought with Zaidan, being unequipped with low morale. They would attempt to siege the small Zaidan town of Ikoria, but quickly got caught inside of traps and ganks throughout the small area. Inside Ikoria, the fighting was brief but intense. Legions of mole squads would tunnel throughout the claim to pick off any attackers unlucky enough to remain in the claim. The surviving attackers would largely desert the scene after their defeat. Meanwhile, in Phoenix, Paragon mercenaries went throughout the claim and littered it with TNT, laying waste to large sections of the city. Small engagements with Eleanorian soldiers would occur in the city, which largely ended in the favor of Paragon fighters. By the end of the war, all Eleanorians had deserted the claim and left the Zaidan fighters freely occupying the capital building of Nexus. The defeat would be humiliating for Eleanor, having boasted about being at the peak of their power and disregarding Zaydan as nothing more than noob squatters. After the defeat, a crisis network between the Eldham Union and the Eldham Alliance formed to coordinate the response to the building crisis in the Eldham Union. The possibility of a coordinated attack was immediately raised, and soon the Eldham Alliance Treaty was activated and all member states were required to fully intervene. Officially, Marsiksult was formed as an organization against map painters and imperialists in the defense of small nations who had nobody to protect their independence. The Eldham Alliance would allege that Marsiksult was nothing more than Rathniri colonizers looking to break up and conquer Eldham nations. Orleanor, Ryzan, Krivonia, Siradra, Azuria, Majula, Eldarim, Zaydan, Sol, and Manzig would all eventually join the Marsiksult alliance and receive the full protection and collaboration of the alliance. Horduty would declare a full alliance with Marsiksult, and Marsiksult themselves declared their full support to the loyalist USSE. With the activation of the Eldham Alliance and the formation of Marsiksult, a large battle was set to occur. The Eldham Union would announce that they were withdrawing from the war and allowing Zaydan to secede. Zaydan would choose to counterattack Eleanor and was to pick from either Phoenix again, Kaskaya, or Aridian. Eventually, it was decided on Phoenix, as the city had already been successfully besieged before. Both sides would begin to rally their side and fortify their towns. Before the battle began, Sylvania would withdraw from the Eldham Alliance, and the Volpyrium would withdraw from the Eldham Union. Sylvania would allege that the Eldham Union violated an agreement that they had made with them. The Volpyrium would leave due to an explicit desire to avoid the wars and conflicts of the past and stay on a true pacifist and isolationist position. The battle would start off with an immediate incursion through the west of the city, with defenders quickly being overrun inside of the city and forced into their own ganks. The defenders would quickly begin to fall. 30 minutes into the battle, the Eleanoran resupply base in Aridian would be controversially bombed by a few Marsiksult fighters. With a large gap in kills and the defenders of the city completely overwhelmed, the battle would be decided in a total victory for Marsiksult. Aaron would become the new administrator of Phoenix, declaring it the capital of Marsiksult on Eldham under the banner of Zaydan. With Phoenix under the control of Marsiksult, they were again allowed to select another city to attack. To assist the loyalist rebellion in the USSE, Kaskaya was selected as a claim to attack due to it being the capital of the Eldham Union. The selection of Kaskaya as the claim prompted the USSE to enter negotiations with the loyalists. After heated negotiations, the USSE agreed to withdraw from the Eldham Union and grant the province of Kuirtrog independence along with the town of Kamenek. A separate secessionist crisis in Adalor would occur, which ended in a referendum to remain in the USSE. The Eldham Alliance was left utterly humiliated by the defeat in Zaydan. With all the members of the alliance having previously voted to kick Eleanor out, many were unhappy about having to defend them. When the battle was over and the result obvious, Shirkaniza left the Eldham Alliance. With the Eldham Union reduced to ashes, the Eldham Alliance would be unofficially dissolved without any members to hold it together. After the collapse of the Eldham Union and Eldham Alliance, Eleanor would enter peace negotiations with Marsiksult and Zaydan. After brief deliberation, Eleanor announced the following policy. Any towns or provinces outside core Eleanorian territory, in blue, have 5 days to reach out from the signature of this agreement to reach out to Marsiksult leadership, who then, in cooperation with Eleanor government, discuss them leaving the nation. If an agreement to stay in Eleanor is not made, the territory goes independent. These new nations will automatically have a 2-month non-aggression pact with Eleanor. Zaydan would be released in accordance with this policy. The states of Sylvania, Redoriv, Ashai, Anglunia, and the AWE would form the Celestial Accords Treaty Organization. Cato would be an alliance similar to the Eldham Alliance, except following a reactionary doctrine, as opposed to the alliance's proactive doctrine. The USSE would be annexed by the Kingdom of Skalding following the end of the war. Thanks for watching and please subscribe. It's free and it really helps out the channel. Thank you. Peace out and goodbye.